The Texas justice system is messy, so let's break it down. You're listening to So You Got Arrested, the podcast that tells you what really happens after an arrest. Hosted by BRCK criminal defense attorneys, we talk to the people who've lived it, worked in it, and been shaped by it. Whether you're facing charges or just want to understand your rights, your options, and the smart moves that could change everything, we've got your back.
So I'm very excited, Scott. We have a Bexar County election coming up for district attorney, and we have one of our candidates here, Mr. Shannon Locke. I was excited to have Shannon on. He's got a heck of a social media following, and I see him on Twitter from time to time and TikTok talking to people and answering their questions. And so we're really lucky to have him on today.
He's a great guy. I've known him forever. I've dealt with him on both sides, and he's always very intelligent and easy to talk to.
So Shannon, I know you know my partner, Scott. You and I hadn't really met until today. So I'm interested in kind of your background. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure thing. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm a board certified criminal defense attorney. I've been practicing for about 20 years. I started out in Arizona for a little while. I went to the University of Arizona and got my law license first in Arizona in about 2002. And Arizona was a little strange back then because they had no reciprocity. So you got to do lots of really big cases early on in your career. So those 3 years that I spent in Arizona, I was trying murder cases. I was in the gang unit.
Wow.
I was doing some really hard-hitting, heavy prosecutorial work. And then I moved over to San Antonio, where I had a job at the Susan Reed District Attorney's Office for a couple of years, and then went to work with Ben Cifuentes at Cifuentes & Locke. We formed a law firm, and we were representing all kinds of folks, criminal defense boutique law firm, also police officers, a lot of police officers. We represented those folks too.
So you went from being a prosecutor to being a defense attorney. So you've seen both sides of it.
I have seen both sides, and I've represented thousands of people, and I handle lots of cases as a prosecutor also. So I think I have a deep understanding of both sides of the equation.
So you mentioned earlier that you were board certified.
Yes.
Can you kind of explain to everybody what that means?
Sure. So a board certified lawyer, approximately 1% of all the lawyers in Texas. And when you get your law license, you can practice any kind of law that you want, and any kind of lawyer can take any kind of case. So if some poor soul comes into my office and I decide to take an oil and gas case, then I can do that. I'm allowed to legally do that, even though you could argue about whether or not I should. And I wouldn't take an oil and gas case. But,
right.
You can take an oil and gas case if you want to. But what the Texas Bar does is they say some people can be specialists. And if you are board certified, you can tell people that you're an expert in a certain kind of law.
Wow.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
And so insofar as you're aware, are you the only board certified candidate for district attorney?
As the field currently stands, I am the only board certified candidate to be the next district attorney. And I think that's important because you have to have, there is a fundamental decision. At the end of the day, the buck stops with the district attorney. You have to be the one who makes the decision. You have to call a ball or a strike. You have to dismiss the case. You have to go to trial. Not for every case. Okay. There needs to be a lot of delegation. But the really important cases where the community has been harmed, you have to know, as a DA, you have to have an independent ability to analyze the case and say, look, have we answered all the questions here? What's going to be the result? Because when the community is harmed in that kind of case, and somebody is found not guilty, or not all of the evidence comes out, or evidence gets suppressed for bad reasons, then the community really suffers. And what happens is you have a loss of trust and a loss of faith in the district attorney's office, and that's extraordinarily dangerous. So it is important to have somebody who not only is a good manager, but also knows the law. Because if you don't have somebody who knows the law, what you have is you have the possibility that these very serious cases will get bungled, and then people will stop believing in the process. And that's a huge issue. It's a huge worry. And really, as I'm looking at the field, it had a lot to do with my decision to run. Because I think it's an extraordinarily important office.
Yeah, and that board certification, I mean, there are requirements that you have to meet for that, right? You have to have tried so many felony cases to verdict. You have to, there's an exam that's involved. And so it's
you
not
have to have
just
done appellate work too.
Yeah, you have to have done appellate work also.
Right. So it's not just a matter of like paying a fee and you get this award. I mean, you have to put in the work in order to get that achievement.
Yes.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's impressive. So where are you from?
So I'm from Baltimore, Maryland originally.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm from Baltimore, Maryland, and I'm kind of I'm a
So
little
like
bit
The
of a-
Wire, the home of The Wire.
That's what got him interested in
Yeah, right.
prosecution.
There you go.
So I'm from Baltimore originally, and I also spent a little bit of time in Mexico. I've kind of been all over.
Wow.
Yeah, and so
You speak
You
Spanish?
speak Spanish?
I do.
Yeah.
I speak Spanish.
Oh,
Are you bilingual?
I am. Yes.
Oh, that's
I'm
awesome.
bilingual.
Yeah.
And, so I represent a lot of Spanish speaking clients, and I am Spanish speaking. So for sure. So anyway, then I went to college out in Minnesota, and then went to law school in Arizona.
Oh, interesting. And
I
so
don't
what
think we've ever had an elected DA who speaks Spanish, and that's a good asset here in Bexar County.
Oh, it's a great asset to practice here in Bexar County,
Yeah.
obviously. So what brought you to San Antonio?
So I got a job at the DA's office with Judge Reed, and so I had my first wife was from here, and so we came out and decided to move out to San Antonio.
And you were at the Bexar County DA's office under Susan Reed. Were you in a specific area? How did that work?
Yeah, so I started off, it was one of those really, as a career, it was strange because I tried a murder case in Arizona, and the next week I was in county court 2 as a second chair. You had a very strict rule that you had to have, you couldn't get promoted unless you had the right number of years in that office.
Right.
And so,
And so for everybody out there, so county courts only handle misdemeanors.
Yes.
So you've won your murder. Here's a
now here's-
misdemeanor theft. Somebody shoplifted from
Possession of
HEB.
marijuana, 0 to 2 kind of thing. Yeah.
so that was an adjustment. And then,
Yeah.
eventually I practiced a little bit in front of Judge Mary in county
yeah,
court
there you
12.
go.
Yeah. And then I moved up to the white collar crime section. So I got to do that, and that was also interesting, and I think allowed me to get hooked in with Ben Cifuentes because he was handling a lot of police officer cases, and that's what the white collar crime section was doing.
Prosecuting a lot of police officers. Yeah.
So while you were at the DA's office, were there ever moments where you felt like there was something about the process or there was something about the way cases were handled that could be improved upon?
Absolutely. So I think that what we are missing, and what we have been missing for so long, is that we have an adversarial system, and that's fine, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what it's supposed to be. But prosecutors, can take a step back from that. And what we should be asking, and we're asking the wrong questions throughout the criminal justice system.
Okay.
We're asking, can we win this case? Okay,
Right.
that's the wrong question. And the reason that's the wrong question is it takes about 2 years to answer that question.
Yeah.
So if you have a serious case and you're saying, well, can I win this? Right. By the time you know that and impose punishment, right, there's been 2 years of change, right? And so what we have to start doing is start asking the question, and it's a better question, is what is the problem here? Okay, what is the fundamental issue that's bringing these people into the DA's office, into the criminal justice system, and how can we address that problem? You can ask that problem and get an answer to that problem within 30 days. Okay, you should be able to answer that question fairly quickly. So if you start asking that question instead, it may be that the whether or not you can win the case doesn't really matter at the end of it, because you try to solve the problem on the front end. So for instance, the domestic violence cases, you have all of these issues, but nobody's asking, is this an abusive relationship? Okay, if it's an abusive relationship, how do we dismantle it? Okay, a protective order, right, that you can get established and agreed to within a very short amount of time,
Right.
That can be a lot more effective and save somebody. Whereas if you're waiting to get the person put on deferred adjudication in 2 years, right?
Or it takes them 6 months to file the case right now in the current DA's office.
Yeah.
When you get arrested for a domestic violence case, it's 6 months before the case gets filed in court.
Right. And so nobody's asking those questions. And so those problems are just festering. And that's a huge public safety issue. So instead of just having those problems, fester and become worse, what I want to do is I want to start asking that question. Okay, is this a problem? Right? Is this an abusive relationship? Is somebody being exploited here? I want to start training the police to ask and tell the prosecutors, okay, why are you in this relationship? Right? I don't have a driver's license. He's my ride to work. Right? These are problems that we can start getting services and people to start responding and solving that problem, so that we can actually start helping those folks in those really abusive, exploitive relationships, get them out of that situation, and then at the end of the day, worry about whether or not we win the case or not.
Now, I do have to push back a little bit because I've spent a lot of my time doing family violence cases.
Yes.
A lot of those witnesses I've talked to, complainants, they are in abusive relationships and they have no intention of leaving that person.
Yes.
And they want to drop the charges. And some of them want to drop the charges because they're being intimidated, but some of them drop the charges just because they still love the guy.
Right. No,
and so I always told my people, don't be telling them how to live their lives because then they're going to shut you down.
Yes. And a lot of this is earning trust.
Right.
But you don't earn trust by ignoring people.
Correct.
And you can, if you ignore somebody, all you're teaching them is that they don't matter. Yeah. And that's the worst lesson that they could possibly take. And so what you have to try, right? And sometimes you get pushback, and sometimes they're not going to trust you, and it's just never going to happen. But at least then you've tried. So I would like to, do you think that the district attorney's office, as it now stands, has a metric to find out how quickly do they contact the complaining witness after the event?
So my sense is that they have advocates in the intake unit that reach out.
Right.
But I know that for whatever reason, there's only 2 intake prosecutors handling all those things to file them. And so I know the DAs don't get involved till later.
Right.
But I've never worked under Joe's administration, so it's a little bit foreign to me.
And it's hard to know.
It's hard to know.
It's hard to know. And,
I know they keep talking about the amount of cases they say they're backlogged is horrifying to me.
It is.
Because looking at whoever the next DA is, that's not going to be fixed in a year. It's going to take like 2 years at least. And I don't think what's happening is they're making a decision on the front end to get rid of the crappy cases.
Right. Yeah, that's also true. And so I've looked at other jurisdictions. One of the jurisdictions that I've looked at is Harris County.
Okay.
They have a 24/7. They have a prosecutor 24/7 who works with the police to decide whether or not to file charges, and that's a great model.
It's a good model.
And it's so. How many times? I know that you all listen to body cams. I spend a lot of my time listening to body cams, and I hear police officers discussing what charges to file.
Right. They get together. They kind of have that huddle, like, "Hey, what should we do here? Yeah, what's appropriate?"
Right.
They get the sergeant on the phone.
Right.
Right.
Never an assistant DA.
Right.
Have you ever heard?
Never.
I've never heard an assistant.
Oddly enough, the only time I've ever seen that is in a small jurisdiction where they call the local county attorney to figure out, "Hey, what should we do here?"
Yeah. And so I think that an assistant district attorney being part of the conversation, also makes you part of the team. Okay. So there is unfortunately right now a divide between law enforcement and the district attorney's office.
Yes.
And it's almost like the district attorney's office is adversarial against the criminal defense attorneys and adversarial against law enforcement.
What do you think the basis of that is when you say that there's a divide?
I think it's because they don't communicate. I think they don't communicate until there's times to offer a plea bargain or that sort of thing. And that's a tremendous gap in communication. So if you can at the front end, right? So the prosecutor's like, well, we decided to charge this case. We decided to charge this case, law enforcement and the assistant district attorney. Then I think the finger pointing starts to go away. Okay, because you're not like, well, you brought this case in. Okay, well, you signed the information. Well, you didn't do the investigation. And there's finger pointing that's not productive. What you could have is an assistant district attorney who's actually involved in it. And that I think would help with that adversarial relationship.
Well, and I think it would also help those situations because I certainly know that this exists where maybe the case isn't that great and then the prosecution wants to get rid of it, but then you have an officer who may be upset, who doesn't understand why, maybe that case wasn't good enough, Well,
generally with SAPD, it's the opposite though, because SAPD is told if you go out on a domestic violence case, you pretty much need to make an arrest.
Right. Yeah.
And so that's part of the issue is there's always been this push back and there's never been a healthy relationship between the DA's office and SAPD.
Right.
It's different. So when I was a prosecutor in Medina County, when I talked to Castroville PD or Hondo PD, they're like, yeah, what do you need?
Yeah.
Here at SAPD, it was like, we do it the way we want. We don't care. Okay. Yeah. So that's not going to be easy to fix.
No, it's not. It's going to take, it takes, I think, a little bit of fresh blood to do it. And I think that's one of the benefits that I'll have is that, look, I'm going to tell them, listen, I want this to be a collaborative relationship.
Yeah.
And, a lot of times if you make a domestic violence arrest and the prosecutor dismisses the case, it doesn't mean the arrest was a bad idea.
No.
Okay, so you have to separate people, and you can't turn your back on somebody just because it may not have been a provable assault. You can't just keep them together and wait for a provable assault to happen. That makes no public safety sense. At the same time, when you're the prosecutor and filtering out these cases, dismissing the case may be the best decision for everybody. And so there's no reason to say, well, that was your fault. Actually, no, everybody was doing their job. And, you should encourage people to do that. Like, yes, you have to make the arrest. Yes, you have to make the dismissal. And
so I'm interested because this sounds like a really good idea, but in the implementation of it. So you're saying that you understand that they still have to make the arrest.
yes,
But it's because I'm thinking the earlier you dismiss that case, the less backlog you have.
right.
So what are you thinking in terms of, okay, you got to make the arrest, officer, but we don't think we can go forward in the case. So what are we doing? Like a week later? Well, what's the process?
So the process would be this. You have to answer the question. Is this an abusive or an exploitive relationship?
Okay.
And sometimes you can't get that answer.
No.
Right. Sometimes it's just, but if you can't get that answer right now, the question that they're asking is, can we win? And I think they're also asking, is this a cooperative witness? Okay.
Yeah, I hate that term.
And that is it is the worst possible question to be asked.
And because here's the thing, I obviously I represent guys who are accused of assaulting their wives, and the wife is calling the DA back and saying, I don't want to pursue charges, and they're saying she's uncooperative. I'm like, well, she's not uncooperative because she's calling you back.
Right. Yeah.
That's not uncooperative.
Yeah.
That just means she doesn't want to pursue the charges. I quibble with the idea of you're in the DA's office as it currently sits. You are either cooperative or uncooperative. There's no gray.
And there's no gray. And at the same time, there's no conversation. Right. What we have is a lack of strategy. We have a lack of conversation, lack of communication. Everybody's just interested in putting you into that category or out of that category, and how that statistic's going to look. I think that is actually a really toxic environment, and it increases all of the public safety problems, the domestic violence. So what you should say is, look, this is a red flag, right? So we have to investigate. We have to know, is this an abusive relationship? What is it? Some jurisdictions have you take a class. Okay.
Yeah.
If you look, we'll get this dismissed, and we'll get it dismissed in short order. But okay, let's talk about, some of these things. Let's, you can give a class and you can say, listen, just because we've dismissed this case, it hasn't gone away, right? If this occurs again, it's a felony, right?
Yeah,
because it could be a continuous family violence.
So in Bexar County, like I know over in the 81st, south of San Antonio, Wilson, Atascosa, Carnes, and what have you, they have a class that's called the RISE class. And they may have put that together. And it's actually a class for the complainants, the victims of domestic violence, who have to take a course that teaches them how not to be stuck in the cycle of violence, or resources that are available to them before they will get rid of a case. Like if you have, I guess, what we call a non-cooperative witness, before they'll get rid of it, that person is taking one of those courses. Do they have that here in Bexar County?
Not to my knowledge. I've never seen anything like that. And
Okay.
So I think that we're asking all the wrong questions. I think if we start asking the right questions, I think that the backlog, I think we'll begin to be able to work through it in a productive way that will actually make us a lot safer. Because I think that once we start identifying these abusive and exploitive relationships, once we start identifying those and really putting resources into taking those cases to trial, doing everything that we can to dismantle those relationships and target those, and sort of just educate and process the others, right. I think you'll see a tremendous reduction in the amount of repeat domestic violence, and that has to be the concern.
Well, and you have an interesting perspective in that you currently work as a criminal defense attorney, and so you kind of bring a perspective from both sides, into this your candidacy. How has your experience as a criminal defense attorney kind of affected your outlook on the criminal justice system?
So I think that it has really revealed to me that we're asking the wrong questions. I really think that has really that's what I feel. I have learned over these 20 years where what we need to do, I think, is start to formulate these solutions. Okay. But also, what surprises me is that when you're looking at a docket, okay, the criminal defense attorney, the criminal defense bar right now is the one that runs essentially the docket by choosing whether or not certain cases plead or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. What prosecutors need to do and what the prosecutors need to really focus on is they need to sit there and say, okay, these are the people that need to be incapacitated. These are the people that we really need to focus on. All right. The rest are really going to get deferred, probation, and it's not going to be a super big secret to do that.
Right. Because there's a small percentage of people who are really bad people.
Right. Yeah. But the behavioral issues that we need to adjust, right, we're looking to target them with probation or deferred adjudication, give them appropriate programs so that they can address that. But then really look at these 5 cases, right, that are on the docket. Okay. We're putting all of our resources, our experienced prosecutors are there, developing the cases, making sure that evidence isn't left untested or whatever it is, and really focus on those folks. I don't think that there's that docket strategy that's being employed right now at all. And so what we would train people to do, and what we'd say, listen, even in misdemeanor courts, there are people like burglary of a vehicle is a misdemeanor. That is
it was a felony when I started practicing. I was shocked when they knocked it down to a misdemeanor.
It's kind of mind-boggling.
Yeah. Very rarely do we go backwards and reduce offenses in level.
But it's a misdemeanor, and so that's a little bit. But if you have a misdemeanor that's a burglary of a vehicle, well, that's somebody you should pay attention to.
Because they tend to be doing multitudes of crimes,
right?
Vehicle burglary,
and they're also planning it. It's not like they've committed this crime by accident. You can drink too much and drive, and be surprised that you're intoxicated. That happens. But if you're burglarizing vehicles, you've made a choice, and that needs to be treated differently than somebody who's just got a behavioral issue that needs to be looked at.
One thing I would say is in tying in to get a better relationship with SAPD, what I think should be said to them sometimes is, hey, SAPD, some of these cases you file with us stink, okay?
Yeah.
But who on the street are the really bad characters. Right. If you would just tell us, this guy's a really bad dude, we can get together and this might be a weak case, but this is worth going forward on.
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah.
But don't tell us every single one of your cases needs to be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Let's have common sense here.
Yeah. There has to be filtering, and there has to be conversation that occurs. And I think that conversation needs to happen between SAPD and more than one person.
Yeah.
And so that's the other issue that I see at the district attorney's office, that as it currently stands, is that I don't know that very many people have that kind of trust from the elected district attorney. And so what you really want to do is you want to make sure that lots of people have discretion. Okay, not too many people, but lots of people have discretion, so that they're feeling like they can make these decisions and talk to SAPD like that. I guarantee you that if a detective calls a third chair or a second chair prosecutor and says, I'm really worried about this person, I guarantee you that they will not say, okay, let me put them on the trial docket, let me figure out how to work up the case. They'll probably say, okay, well, I need to talk to my supervisor about that. And that conversation will or will not occur. And that person, as my understanding of how the DA's office currently works, that person would also probably have to talk to their supervisor. And by the time they get back to the third chair prosecutor to tell the detective, it's probably too late.
So you're talking about empowering the DAs to feel comfortable establishing good relationships with the different detectives.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. The different detectives, what I would try to do is I'd say, look, we've got lots of people at the DA's office, and everybody should be on alert for these different things.
Okay.
And so that will help us filter the cases in a more intelligent way. And at the end of the day, I think all of us will be more safe if we do that.
Mm-hmm. How did it work when you were there, Scott, in terms of, these relationships with the detectives?
So the interesting thing, for a while, I did murder intake at the DA's office. And so every murder that wasn't a baby murder or spousal murder came through me. So what happened is I got to establish a really good relationship with the sergeant of homicide. And they actually ended up giving me a card. I could go over to SAPD anytime I wanted, and just walk back there. And they were establishing a night murder unit. So I would go over there at night, and I would just sit down with the detectives.
Yeah.
And I used to get invited to their parties and stuff. Yeah. And so I established a rapport, but nobody this is like initiative.
Right. That wasn't like the policy of the office. That was you on your own.
But I think if you encourage DAs, hey, you need to develop relationship. If you're going to be somebody who's going to handle a bunch of property crimes, because property crimes are not centrally located at their substations.
Right. Yeah.
You need to go to the substation once in a while and introduce yourself and say hello.
Yeah, those relationships are very important.
But the only way you're going to get those relationships is if they get out from behind the desk of the DA's office and go out to places.
But also to be trusted, right?
Yeah.
So I will tell you that if an ADA goes to a substation right now, they're probably not sure that they're going to be able to say the right thing. Yeah. Right. Yeah, and so, you go out there and you're Scott Simpson saying whatever, right? And you're told, well, Scott, you shouldn't have said that. You shouldn't have said the detective. You shouldn't have told the detective that. Instead of saying, hey, Scott, that's fantastic that you have relationships with these folks. Yeah. Thank goodness you're communicating freely. That's awesome, right?
And you're 100%.
And so, that's what I'd encourage my ADAs. So what I'm going to try to do, and this is also really important, is that it is such a toxic environment right now. And so what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to have these ADAs and I'm going to tell them, look, your emotional and mental health are my top priority. I want to find out what you really enjoy doing. Okay. Why are you an assistant district attorney? I want to get 20 years and I want to retire. Okay. Well, so let's put you someplace where you don't,
you can't have things up.
Right. Yeah. But I'm going to ask them, I'm going to say, what really lights your fire? I want to try cases,
But you have people like, I have a passion for child victim cases.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
You have other people like, I don't want to try those type of cases.
Exactly. Right. And so you start matching them up with what their passions are. And then you also encourage them, right? Because, hanging out with detectives and doing that sort of thing, it's kind of cool. It is. It's not like, that's why you became a prosecutor, because that is the stuff that's on the TV.
And once you establish those relationships, now the detectives will give you what's like, instead of like, I think something's missing here. Let me file a notice over to the sergeant. Yeah. I just call up and say, hey, Detective Hines, he was a good friend of mine. It was like, what's going on with this? And he'll just tell you.
Yeah, exactly. And so then it's not a gotcha, right?
Right.
And that's what I know that police hate that, is when you say, look, oh, you didn't fingerprint this. Haha, we had to dismiss it, right? That's a terrible. So the toxicity spreads,
right?
Okay,
right. They're afraid to make mistakes to the DA's office,
right?
Okay, and so there has to be a situation where I always, when I see everybody being micromanaged, I'm like, you're paying these people for their judgment.
Right.
Let them use it.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and that means they're going to make bad judgments once in a while.
Yeah.
And as long as they talk to you, they can't be afraid of being fired because they mess something up.
Yeah. And that's what I would do. So somebody makes a mistake, I would bring them in and I'd say, so why did you dismiss this case? And if the answer is, I wanted to do a favor, or, that's not a legitimate reason.
Right.
But if they tell me, listen, I thought the problem, they had done marriage counseling, and I have a letter from the counselor, and if he gets a conviction, he loses his top secret clearance, and then the kids don't get fed.
Right.
Okay. That's not even a disciplinary issue, but I need to know, and you need to be able to tell me freely. Right.
If you can't intelligently tell your boss why you did something, we probably don't need you.
Right. That's a problem. But if you're using your intelligence and rationale, then that makes sense. And I'm going to encourage you to do that. And even if it turns out badly, because some of those cases will, then I will still, I'll again encourage you to use your discretion, because that's really important.
Well, I was always taught, I grew up in a family of attorneys, and one of the key lessons that I was taught was that every lawyer makes mistakes. The best lawyers just don't make the same mistake twice, right? It's the practice of law. We're going to exercise bad judgment from time to time. We're going to learn our lessons, but you can't just fire somebody, maybe over a one-time mistake that they've made.
I think the one cardinal sin that I've worked for 4 different DAs. I don't think the elected should ever find something out through a call from the media. They should know from their prosecutors, hey, this high profile thing just happened today. Although sometimes it's hard to know what is going to be high profile.
Sometimes it sort of happens.
Right. But I know that's like the one golden rule is let your elected hear it from you before they get the call from WIAM.
Yeah.
So Scott, we're up against the time. It went by so fast. Like, I had a list of questions.
But there may be some things that you still want to get out. We can go a little bit over. Did you get to say everything you wanted to say?
Well, I think that I'm really excited. I think that we can bring a fresh perspective to the district attorney's office. I think that fresh perspective is going to do a lot to really protect San Antonio from what's happening now. And so right now we have a district attorney's office that has lost the faith, I think, of every important constituency. I don't think law enforcement feels, and what's happening is, as I go around San Antonio and Bexar County, people are like, well, they don't care about me. Okay. And it's true when I go to the Pride Center. It's true when I go to talk to police officers. It's true when I talk to people in Stone Oak, West Side, East Side, South Side. Everybody's saying the same thing. So there's been this tremendous loss of faith in the DA's office. So how do you restore that? That's going to be my mission. One, you need to realize that that's what's happened. Okay.
Yeah.
That's number one. Number two, once we realize that we've lost the faith of the public, of everybody, then what we have to do is we have to start explaining how we're going to act strategically. So we didn't talk about my social media.
I was going to say, I wanted you to mention that and tell people how to find you, because what's interesting to me is on your social media, you interact with everybody.
Yeah.
You answer questions.
Right.
You talk about these ideas that you have. Yeah. So I want you to please tell everyone how they can find you.
You can find me on TikTok, Shannon Locke 5. I guess there are 4 other Shannon Locks.
Okay.
And do you want to spell it just so?
Yes, it's SHANNONLOCKE, the number 5.
Okay.
And then also on YouTube. You can find me on YouTube also.
Do you have a campaign website that everybody can find?
Yes, it is LOCKEFORDA. Okay. Lock for DA. And you can look me up there. But the social media stuff is important. And what I'm going to do is to restore the faith in the office, explain my strategies, okay, and then transparently execute those strategies. And so I was on KSAT the other day, and I told them, look, I'm going to try to have as many news conferences. So my goal ultimately is to have a news conference and nobody show up, because they already know what's going on. Yeah, they're tired of hearing from me. I think the DA's office now is so reclusive that it is causing this mistrust.
They're insulated.
Yeah, they very much are. And I understand it. It is a hard job, and it is not one where you're going to be popular.
That's what I've told Scott. The one thing about being a district attorney is you're going to make somebody unhappy. Right. You can't make everybody happy. You can't make that your goal, because it's just not going to work.
Right. It isn't. And so you have to combat that with transparency and say, listen, I think people will understand if you say, listen, I'm not dismissing this case because we're lazy or because, we dropped the ball, but this is why. Okay. This is, putting this person through a trial to get a not guilty is going to just make the trauma worse. And so I think the community would understand that. Whereas if you just dismiss the case and don't explain it, I think then they think, well, they probably did a favor or something like that.
Yeah, or they feel shut out of the process. Or...
I had an experience where I had a number of murder cases dismissed, and then it made the news. And the comments were like, oh, he must have gotten it. And the case needed to be dismissed, right? And the prosecutor basically said, we don't talk about pending charges, okay? And so that was their explanation. And I kept expecting them to come forward and say, look, this case, you had the least culpable person in a multi-defendant indictment. It made more sense to dismiss his case than tank all of the others. They could have easily explained that, but instead they said nothing, and all the conspiracy theories came out.
There you go.
And that is the tremendous danger of being insular in this office. And
that's where you lose the trust.
That's where you lose the trust. And so and trust in the office is important, because if people don't trust you, they don't call. And if they don't call, you don't know that there's a problem. And then that's how people end up getting very badly hurt. Right. And so the transparency, everybody thinks that, social media, somebody's on TikTok. That's kind of silly. But no, there's a lot going on social media, and it is where people are. So you have to be able to communicate that way to get people to have faith in you.
Well, we appreciate you coming out. I would encourage all of you, to go to Mr. Locke's website, follow him on TikTok, learn more about his positions. We appreciate your time today.
Well, sure thing. I really appreciate being here. Thank you.
And I will say the DA's office race in Bexar County is probably the most important thing that affects your lives as citizens. Do your research and get out and vote, please.
Yes, definitely. Please.
Thank you all.
Thanks for listening to So You Got Arrested. If you found this podcast helpful, share it with someone who needs to hear it. For more legal insights and real talk from the front lines of the Texas justice system, follow us and subscribe. And remember, BRCK Criminal Defense has your back. For more information, visit us at brckdefense.com.